When unimaginable wealth is mentioned, one historic name instantly dominates conversations across continents and financial history alike. For centuries, Rothschild symbolized global banking power, shaping governments, economies, and entire eras through unmatched influence. Yet beyond that towering legacy, quieter, ambitious Jewish families were steadily rising throughout industrial Europe. Nowhere was their influence more powerful than in Germany, the continent's unstoppable industrial engine. We decided to search for the 10 richest Jewish family businesses in Germany today. We expected legendary dynasties still shaping Berlin, Munich, and Hamburg from polished boardrooms. We searched archives, financial lists, and corporate histories for heirs of monumental fortunes. But what we discovered was not wealth, not names, but silence. The list we hoped to compile simply does not exist today, and understanding why becomes the real and unsettling story behind everything. This is not merely a story about vanished billionaires or missing corporations. It is a ghost story about erased legacies and stolen economic futures. Before darkness fell, Germany thrived with Jewish enterprise and extraordinary commercial vision. To grasp what vanished, we must first witness what once flourished magnificently. By the late 19th century, Jewish entrepreneurs were architects of modern German capitalism. Though under 1% population, their influence was economically monumental nationwide. Historical studies revealed Jewish families comprised 16% of Germany's corporate elite. Among interconnected board members, that number reached a staggering 25%. They served as living bridges where capital, innovation, and strategy constantly flowed. Their networks connected railways, banks, factories, and global trade routes seamlessly. First came the banking titans, pillars of financial stability and trust. Families like the Mendelssohns anchored Prussian and later German economic foundations. Founded in 1795 in Berlin, Mendelssohn and Company flourished for generations. They financed railways and advised governments, including the vast Russian Empire. For 5 generations, their expertise shaped Prussia's and Germany's financial destiny. Their salons hosted intellectual giants, blending culture with economic leadership. After 143 years as financial pillars, their bank was liquidated. In 1938, Nazi authorities forcibly dismantled this symbol of Jewish achievement. Next were retail visionaries who revolutionized urban commercial experiences entirely. Department stores became democratic temples of modern consumer culture nationwide. George Wertheim opened Europe's largest department store in Berlin in 1896. Fixed prices and exchange rights were radical consumer innovations then. By 1933, Wertheim stores dominated prime real estate across Berlin. They symbolized prosperity, openness, and urban modernity in Germany. Their fierce competitors were the Tietz family retail empire. Founded in 1882, they built Europe's largest private department chain. These stores were not simple shops, but social gathering landmarks. They reshaped consumer behavior and defined the rhythm of city life. Beyond banks and stores stood thousands of industrial Jewish businesses. Factories, publishers, traders, and workshops formed economic backbones nationwide. In 1933, roughly 100,000 Jewish-owned businesses operated. About half were shops, many others were powerful industrial firms. In textiles, metals, grain trading, Jewish entrepreneurs were indispensable leaders. They pioneered manufacturing methods and connected Germany to global markets. This vibrant economic universe existed before the year 1933. Jewish families were not marginal players, but dynamic national leaders. Then began the systematic, calculated demolition of Jewish economic life. It was the greatest organized transfer of wealth in history. The process unfolded slowly, masked in legal language and bureaucracy. The regime named this state-sanctioned plunder Aryanization. Phase 1 began immediately after Hitler became chancellor in January 1933. On April 1st, nationwide boycotts targeted Jewish-owned businesses. Windows were marked, customers intimidated, loyalty questioned publicly. Psychological warfare created fear long before formal confiscations began. Banks cut credit lines, contracts were canceled without explanation. Profitable businesses suddenly faced artificial financial collapse. Owners were pressured to sell at insultingly low prices. These were not free markets, but orchestrated extortions. The Tietz department empire became a prime early target. Major banks demanded Aryan leadership as condition for survival. Facing suffocation of credit and rising threats, the Tietz sons resigned leadership positions. Within days, they were forced to sell everything for barely 10% value. The family eventually fled Germany, abandoning the empire they painstakingly built. This same coercive pattern repeated thousands of times nationwide. Phase 2 transformed intimidation into fully legalized dispossession and exclusion. The Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of citizenship and protection entirely. Without rights, property ownership lost legal security overnight. Economic restrictions flooded in through relentless discriminatory legislation. In 1938, Jews were ordered to register all significant assets. Anything exceeding 5,000 Reichsmarks had to be declared. This created a comprehensive database of Jewish wealth nationwide. Essentially, it became a shopping list for the regime. The Reich flight tax became another brutal financial weapon. Those fleeing persecution lost up to 90% of assets. Before 1933, the tax raised less than 1 million annually. By 1938, it generated 342 million Reichsmarks. Through this tax alone, billions in modern value were extracted. It functioned as a merciless toll on desperation and survival. By mid-1938, Jewish retail presence had collapsed dramatically. From 50,000 stores, only 9,000 remained operational. Phase 3 arrived violently on November 9th and 10th, 1938. Kristallnacht shattered any remaining illusion of lawful restraint. Over 7,000 businesses were smashed and looted nationwide. 29 department stores were devastated during coordinated attacks. 1,400 synagogues were ablaze systematically. Homes, schools, and cemeteries faced desecration and destruction. Early reports cited 91 murdered victims. Modern historians estimate hundreds, possibly over 1,000 fatalities. 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and deported to camps. Imprisonment became another tool of extortion and coercion. Families secured releases only by agreeing to immigrate immediately. Remaining property was forfeited as condition of freedom. After Kristallnacht, Jewish retail activity was formally banned. Remaining enterprises were forcibly sold without negotiation. The Jewish community was fined 1 billion Reichsmarks collectively. They paid for damages inflicted upon themselves. Banks, stores, factories changed hands but did not vanish. Wealth moved into new politically connected ownership. A few families like the Warburgs managed to escape. Their influence later flourished in America and Britain. For most families, devastation replaced generational prosperity entirely. Their assets were absorbed into emerging Aryan corporate empires. This leads to uncomfortable truths about post-war wealth. Many fortunes were built atop confiscated Jewish enterprises.
The Tietz Empire was renamed and restructured under Aryan control. New leadership acquired shares at fractions of real value. After the war, the chain became a major retail giant. Original owners received minimal compensation for stolen holdings. This pattern repeated across Germany's largest corporate dynasties. Aryanizers built post-war empires from confiscated foundations. Friedrich Flick became one of Hitler's principal industrial backers. He used tens of thousands of forced laborers. Convicted at Nuremberg, he served only a few years. He later rebuilt empire and regained immense wealth. The Quandt family rose to become Germany's wealthiest dynasty. They hold dominant shares in BMW today. Günter Quandt joined the Nazi Party in 1930.
His factories supplied military equipment extensively. He profited from Aryanization and forced labor exploitation. Thousands suffered within his industrial facilities. His son, Herbert Quandt, later saved struggling BMW. He used inherited wealth to secure controlling stake. Today, that controlling stake remains within the family. Their fortune traces back to Third Reich accumulation. Even beloved brands carry complicated historical burdens. Industrial leaders openly supported Nazi structures financially. Some executives volunteered for elite Nazi units. Post-war silence surrounded uncomfortable corporate pasts. Only decades later did public acknowledgments surface cautiously. Historical studies exposed previously concealed affiliations. These examples are not isolated corporate anomalies. They form central pillars of Germany's business landscape. The plunder created massive pools of redistributed capital. Politically aligned elites acquired assets at bargain prices. This redistribution shaped West Germany's economic miracle profoundly. Restitution efforts remained incomplete and limited. Only small fractions of confiscated value were restored. Generational wealth was permanently fractured and dispersed. We return now to our original investigation. The list remains disturbingly empty. Not short, not incomplete, but entirely erased. An echo where powerful names once stood. Germany's corporate narrative contains silent absences, names removed from stock exchanges and boardrooms permanently. The destruction was not incidental but ideological. Erasing Jewish economic power was deliberate policy. The question itself reveals historical misunderstanding. There are no richest Jewish families in Germany today. The better question asks why absence exists. Why generational wealth left no descendants locally? You can destroy more than people through violence. You can erase legacy, influence, and economic futures. The grandchildren of industrial pioneers inherited displacement instead. Their rightful influence now rests elsewhere globally. Germany's skyline stands, but foundations shifted historically. Wealth transferred, names replaced, memory obscured. This absence becomes the most powerful evidence, a void revealing systematic historical erasure. The banks once bearing Jewish names disappeared. The department stores carry different legacies now. Factories continue operating without original founders remembered. Industrial growth masks earlier displacement quietly. Historical institutions preserve fragments of lost stories. Memory survives through archives and testimony. Organizations document Jewish life before catastrophe. They safeguard narratives erased from corporate ledgers. Understanding this history reshapes economic conversations today. Prosperity sometimes carries hidden origins beneath success.
The Golden Age once pulsed through German commerce vibrantly. Entrepreneurial energy defined cities and industries nationwide. Then ideology weaponized law and finance strategically. Economic annihilation followed systematic discrimination. From boycott to registration, from tax to violence, each phase tightened control and transferred ownership. The wealth never disappeared into abstraction. It moved into carefully chosen new hands. Post-war growth benefited from earlier confiscations. Economic miracle rose atop complicated moral ground. Restitution processes struggled against lost documentation and displacement. Justice proved partial and painfully delayed. Entire dynasties fragmented across continents permanently. Diaspora replaced domestic economic leadership. The silence in Germany's wealth rankings speaks volumes. Absence becomes historical testimony itself. The list that cannot be written tells truth. It reveals systematic economic destruction. Germany's industrial heart once beat with Jewish enterprise. Today, that rhythm echoes faintly through memory. Wealth, influence, innovation once intertwined deeply. Then ideology severed those connections ruthlessly. Understanding absence honors erased contributions respectfully. It confronts uncomfortable economic inheritances honestly. History demands recognition beyond statistics and balance sheets. Behind numbers stood families, dreams, generations. The void where names should appear remains powerful. It is the final chapter of our investigation. The richest Jewish family businesses in Germany today do not exist. The real story is why that list vanished completely.